the Honorable Minister of Finance, Arion, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, Miguel De Weaver, President of the St. Martin Bankers Association, Derek Downs, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Rolika Roach of the Department of Communication, and on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Arion, I welcome you to this press conference on an update from the Bankers Association to their clientele with regards to the COVID-19 disease. For more on this subject, I would like to invite the Minister of Finance, Arion, to give his opening remarks. Minister Arion.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to the media. Good morning to the people of St. Martin once again. Yesterday, me as Minister of Finance, the Secretary General, Miguel De Weaver, the Bankers Association President and their members, we all had a meeting pertaining to their clientele, our current situation with dealing with COVID-19. And I thought it very important that we keep open communication as much as possible during this crisis. And we plan to do a live conference, invite the media in to also ask a couple of questions. One of the questions, obviously, that came about a lot in the last week or two was pertaining to an economic plan. Obviously, this plan would have to include the banks. We already see some banks already started with relief programs, and we needed more updates on this. A couple other discussion points were the best practices at the banks in terms of hygiene, in terms of social distancing. Also, which sectors based on their portfolios were or are already being the most stressed by the current situation, and foreign exchange. Pertaining to the foreign exchange, I would like to mention that it's obvious that we don't have the amount of tourists coming in anymore that we will be used to. So no cruise, no airlines. So that would mean that no more US dollars coming in. So I would like to mention to the public to use our local currency as much as possible, the guilder, obviously to keep the balance, the ratio of foreign exchange at a respectable and comfortable level. I would now give the floor to Mr. Daren Downs, the President of the St. Martin Bankers Association, for his updates and remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Good morning to all. As you can see, the banks, and I can assure the public that all of the banks on the island will be working with their clients to ensure that we get you through this very difficult time. Some banks are looking at their clients on a case-by-case basis. You would have seen that the Bermuda Islands Bank has indicated that it would provide a 3-month full payment moratorium for the months of March, April, and May. And that's a start. We don't know where the situation is going to go. So we felt that it was good to have a start of at least 3 months, and then we'll take it from there. And if it has to be extended, it will be extended. But all of the banks are prepared to assist their clients as best as they can. And as I mentioned, some banks are still looking to see if they come with a program outside of on a case-by-case basis. But in some instances, banks' head offices are not in the Dutch Caribbean, so they do have to consult their head offices to determine what they will do. On the issue of hygiene, we are taking this very seriously. Banks have introduced various social distancing measures, including only allowing a certain amount of clients to enter the premises at any one point in time. We have hand sanitizers on the premises. I know for sure that on a consistent basis, we have cleaners wiping down counters, door handles, and these types of things to ensure that we keep the place sanitized. You will have seen that the Bermuda Islands Bank announced the closure of 2 branches. This was primarily because, given the closure of the schools, we have a number of staff members who will need to take care of their kids. So to be able to provide proper service for the essential products and services of the bank, we had to close 2 branches and concentrate operations in Phillipsburg and in Bush Road. But again, the banks are committed to ensuring that online services, the ATMs, the payment services, These important services that the community will need are continued to be made available. We have committed to that. So we are doing our part to try to get all of us through this very difficult period. It's going to be a very difficult period for the country. I would like to reiterate, as the minister just mentioned, that the foreign exchange will reduce in terms of coming in, and we will need to have foreign exchange available for imports. You need to import medicines, you need to import food, you need to import fuel for GB that we all can keep the lights on. So as much as possible that you can use the guilder currency, because that will reduce any pressure on the foreign exchange reserves, that we can have those reserves available to ensure that the needed supplies are on the island.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. If there are no further opening statements, the floor is now open. Stephen Cerulean of PJ82 Radio, you have the floor.
Okay, Mr. Roach. Gentlemen, good morning, Minister. Mr. Downs from WIB, you spoke of the moratorium that has been put in place by WIB. Is that solely for loans, or is it also including mortgages?
All loans, mortgages, personal loans, car loans, business loans, all loans are caught. As the announcement indicated, it represents loans that are not in arrears more than 90 consecutive days. Well, those are usually in arrears more than 90 consecutive days aren't paying anyway. But these are basically for loans, what you call loans in good standing. And the reason for that is because there may be some legal issues around loans who are past the 90-day category, but it's for everyone. Now, what you can do is, if you do not want to take advantage of the concession, you just contact us at the contact information that's in the ad, and let us know we do not want to take advantage of the moratorium, and we will still allow your payment to go through. So you do not have to. Some people will remain at work, some people will remain, their businesses will remain open. So they may not want to take advantage of the concession, and they can just let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. Andrew Dick of Radio St. Martin, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning to all here. Mr. Downs, concerning the other banks, as far as an association, I'm sure you could get the feeling from the other banks if they're prepared also to follow the Women Islands Bank policy, and also, is it also possible for new loans to at least relax the requirements for persons requesting a new loan at this time?
Okay, the other banks are committed to working with their clients. As I mentioned earlier, the decision to go the route that we have gone is a decision that they have to make for themselves. I won't be able to speak to whether or not they will do that. And I would believe that they, in consultation with their head offices, will determine what is the best course of action. But they have committed to working with their clients, even if it's on a case-by-case basis. You raise a very good question in terms of new loans. We are still open for business, yes. However, you would imagine that given the economic uncertainty that the island is facing, new loan requests will incur more scrutiny. The minister made earlier reference to areas in the economy that will be more affected than others. There will be some areas, if you take Front Street, for instance, the harbor, tourist base, businesses, tour companies, car rentals that depend heavily on tourism. These companies and the employees of these companies are more vulnerable to, the negative economic impact that will be caused. So you would expect, and I would encourage persons who are in those sectors to really think hard before you go and get yourself in any additional debt, because we really don't know where this is going to go. So more due diligence will be taken into account. I don't believe that the banks will relax things like the debt service ratio requirement, because this is not the time to be, to be risk averse. Bearing in mind that the monies that banks lend are depositors' monies. So you would want to be able to come back to the bank and say, hey, I want my whatever I have there, and we have to be able to give it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. We now move on to the final round of questions. Stephen, you have the floor.
Mr. Downs, the Minister of Finance spoke of we must try to limit spending foreign currency, and that, I believe, is the dollar. You're here, went to CAPS, you're the managing director for WIB, and you're also the president for the Bankers Association. What kind of a collaboration has there been with the other banks in terms of we having sufficient foreign currency in circulation to fulfill our needs?
Okay, I have reached out to the other banks to also encourage them to, for instance, locals who come to borrow new monies, give them in guilders. Now, you would imagine that there are already commitments made by these banks in a particular currency, whether it's guilder, dollar, or euro. So if they've already made a commitment in a particular currency, unless the client is prepared to change that currency to guilders, then you have to live up to that commitment. You also have to bear in mind that we are in a monetary union, which means that the island of Curacao also benefits from the foreign exchange that St. Martin generates. And we know that St. Martin generates more foreign exchange than it needed for its own import use. So I don't have any influence on the Bankers Association in Curacao, but they also would need to play their part. But if we as citizens, in understanding that the foreign exchange is important to continue the life that we are in, that we have, and the existence that we have, there's nothing wrong with spending guilders. Guilders is the national currency, and stores, they have to take the legal tender of the island. They cannot say to you, no, I do not want guilders. They're not allowed to do that. So we're just asking that you be judicious, because again, and Minister Arion said this yesterday, St. Martin's slow season has started in March. We have to find our way all the way down to November if the situation with this virus gets corrected. So we have already lost the season. So practically no foreign exchange, or very little foreign exchange, is going to be coming in for the next 6 months. That's a long period of time. So how do we help the situation? Spend guilders.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. Andrew Dick, you have the final question.
Minister Arion, since we're on the topic of finance, GEBE, yesterday they did announce certain measures as far as payment of bills and so on is concerned. But I'm sure that you've heard in the community, they've been talking about a relief from GEBE itself. So as far as government streamlining together with GEBE, is there some type of package also being prepared with GEBE where all consumers are concerned?
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Speaking with the COM, we are looking at all the government-owned companies and how they can contribute to the current situation. This isn't an isolated situation. This is a countrywide situation. I know GEBE is a topic of concern, especially not cutting the meters of bill of persons that are late or need to pay. I believe that we still haven't finalized these discussions, but it is a topic of discussion and concern. And I can again assure you that as a COM, we live here, we understand the pain of the people. We understand that this is not a situation that we asked for. We could have prepared for it. It isn't a hurricane. So we are looking to make sure that everyone is safe and as much as possible able to live through the pain that we will be facing in the near future.
Thank you, Minister Arion. The floor is now closed. Before we end this broadcast, I will allow each panelist to provide some closing remarks, starting with the Secretary General of the Ministry of TIAT, Mr. Miguel de Weaver.
Thank you, Valenka. I think in closing, I think one of the points that I would really like to emphasize to the community that this is primarily a health problem. And the way in which we want to address this problem is to try to reduce by self-isolation and to stop the spread. once that is done, then the movement and the economic activity can continue as long as the United States and the emerging markets also can control their problem. So the closures of businesses and the other measures that we are introducing is primarily so that we can try to minimize the spread of this problem in our community. So I would really like to ask our community for their understanding, recognize the importance of reducing movement and social contact and the social distancing, so we can minimize that problem and thereby certainly try to get back to the level of economic activity as much as possible. We are looking at ways in which we can help to come up with an economic plan together with the Ministry of Finance and the bankers and a number of different major stakeholders, so that we can see how we can weather this storm together.
Thank you, SG DeWeaver. Mr. Derek Downs.
I would like to reassure the public that the banking sector is here to help. We will not remove the umbrella when the rain is falling. We will try to assist our customers as best as possible to take us through this crisis. You do not have to worry about liquidity. The banks are very liquid. You don't have to worry that your deposits are at risk. The banks are strong. We just need to, as the others are saying, we as a country, we need to band together and see how we get through this crisis, but we will get through. We've come out of Hurricane Irma, and we've come out stronger than we were before. So be assured, the bank will continue to provide the services that are necessary for people to be able to go to the supermarkets, send their payments overseas to assist their kids and whatnot. These services, we will ensure they are available to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Downs. Minister of Finance, the Honorable Artwell Arion.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say, in terms of the banks, let's try to use the ATMs as much as possible. Let's try to use online banking as much as possible. All the banks have I would say, a pristine online service at this point. Try as much as possible to use these services. The government alone can't do this alone. We would need the community to follow our requests, follow legitimate information come from the trusted sources, which is our government website, government Facebook pages, the Facebook page of the Prime Minister, and the other government entities. And I also hope that the media follows these same protocols and getting the information from these trusted sources. I will again say what I said this morning. It may be a bit painful at times, but more than ever, I believe we will again see the true definition of what St. Martin Strong means and the true resiliency of St. Martin and her people. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Eadie. Honorable Minister, panelists, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of this broadcast for today, Wednesday, March 18th, 2020. For rebroadcast, tune in at 7 p.m. on St. Martin Cable TV and via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Relika Roach, and bidding you a pleasant day further.